It's time for Political Breakfast. The pool of candidates running for Georgia governor has grown by 3 this week alone. First, former Lieutenant Governor Geoff Duncan, now a Democrat, and Secretary of State Brad Raffensperger, and the lesser-known businessman and board chair of the YMCA of Metro Atlanta, Clark Dean. That's who strategists Tharon Johnson and Brian Robinson wanted to talk about with host Lisa Rayam.
The way I'll address this, Lisa, is to kind of talk about what you have to do as this outsider who doesn't have any name ID in order to become relevant. You know, the personal wealth will be hugely important because it's going to be really hard to make the I have a pathway to victory argument to the donor base in Georgia, much of which already has a relationship with Burt Jones, Chris Carr, and Brad Raffensperger. Mm-hmm. So the traditional donors are already going to be kind of lined up there. So he's got to have a group of rich friends who can fund it that aren't necessarily part of the regular political order. And he's got to put in personal money too. Now, can he put in $10, $15 million? Wow. What I would say to him in a friendly way is, if you aren't going to put in $10 to $15 million, don't do this. There's simply not a pathway for you here.
Lisa, you may remember I broke this news on the show a few weeks ago, maybe over a month ago, that Clark Dean was thinking about running for governor. Clark Dean is someone that I think a lot of folks should pay attention to, but he's also a person that's been around the Atlanta community for a while. If you look at his work in the real estate community, particularly working with Transwestern, he's really positioned himself as a go-to person to help businesses and others try to migrate here. But he's also a very calm and strong individual, has a temperament that is going to be really unique and interesting in this field where I think it's going to be so how loyal are you to President Trump and his agenda? He's a businessman, but he's also presenting himself as an outsider, as a person that can actually work with a lot of different folks. And so I think he's going to raise the money. Brian, I think you bring up a good point about whether or not he can self-finance, how much of that he can do.
There's going to be a lot of money spent by Jones, a lot of money spent by Raffensperger, a little less, but still a substantial amount by Chris Carr in his campaign. So you've got to really break through at a time when everybody's going to be spending a lot of money and no one knows who he is. Everyone else has the benefit of having some name ID. Now, the lieutenant governor, attorney general do not have the name ID of Brian Kemp. Brad Raffensperger does, but that's because he's a unicorn. It's extraordinarily rare that somebody have the universal ID that Raffensperger has because of what history has given us that made him so prominent and well known. No one knows who Clark Dean is. And he's got to go be known. He's got to tell us who he is before he can tell us what he's for. So that adds another step there. So he's going to have to go out there and start spending really before the others do.
But this is a really good gentleman. Never knew his party really affiliations because of, in business, we kind of talk about it, don't talk about it. But he asks a lot of good questions over the years and has a lot of respect for a lot of folks in which he served. But just, I think how will he utilize his experience in the business community to bring people together as an executive? But he is going to launch his campaign as an outsider and business leader.
What are the larger implications? Well, if he does come in and spend $10 million, it is a benefit to the non-Burt Jones candidates, right? Because Burt Jones has a lot of money. He's lieutenant governor. He's got a lot of establishment support. He's got Trump's endorsement, which is the gold standard in Republican politics. That's what everybody wants. So that gives him a pretty high floor. So everybody else has got to compete to make sure Burt doesn't get 50+1 on election day. And so the more there's people spending to kind of cut up the pie a little bit, the more the chance is that you keep Burt below 50%. So this could change the strategy of all those other campaigns that aren't Burt Jones. I think Burt Jones's strategy stays the same. Everyone else now, has another person who may be out there spending money, taking shots at Burt Jones, because everyone has an incentive to make sure Burt doesn't get 50+1 or this whole thing's over and it's all for naught if he does. So if you're going to get in, you got to be willing to shoot at the king. You got to be willing to spend your own money. And there's a long road to hoe. And you better be darn talented. You better have a darn good message that really resonates if you're going to make a difference in this race.
And that conversation continues on the full podcast. You can find it now at wabe.org. Amplifying Atlanta, this is listener-funded, WABE 90.1. Thanks for listening and supporting us.